Hi guys, welcome to a new episode of Let's Talk. This is Akim. My name is etc. on eToro, and I'm with my co-host Dimitri. Dimitri is also a popular investor on eToro, and we have a very special guest today, a friend of ours. It's Max Molter. He's also an eToro popular investor, quickly growing one with quite impressive returns. Um, and today we will discuss airlines. So, Max, airlines. I checked. I had a look at your portfolio. You don't have a single airline stock.
No,
Not
I
not
don't.
not even anything somehow related to airlines. So why did you accept to join our episode about airlines? What is your relationship, the relationship of your investment strategy in relation to airlines?
Right now I do more of a statistical trading approach, so I don't really look that much into sectors. But in the past, I've shorted airline stocks a lot. And actually, my best trade that I've ever made in terms of annualized profits were a short position on airlines. So I shorted Lufthansa, the German airline company. I think 3 days or something before they had to get new capital. And within those 3 days, I made 40% on the short position. And yeah, that's basically what I remember on airlines. But I don't really like the business, except for shorting, of course.
I mean, I guess if you're shorting, it means you don't believe in airlines. I remember we discussed with Dimitri last week something in that direction. Dimitri told me, correct me if I'm wrong, Dimitri, but you said something like the airline sector basically pisses you off because there's a big lack of innovation. Like the comfort of the planes is the same or even worsening, decade after decade.
Mhm. Yeah,
Is that reason enough to short?
I'm not shorting, but obviously Max felt strongly enough for him to short, and he shorted the German one, which is probably more familiar with since Lufthansa is German. But yeah, I mean, what was the last time you got on an airline, travel somewhere, and you say, "Wow, that was an experience. Let me buy the stock." Right?
That never happened.
That never happened.
No.
And I mean, okay, I'm older than you guys, and I've been traveling probably more years than you guys, but uh, nothing has nothing has changed. The food got worse, the waiting lines got worse. Okay, too many things can go wrong if you look it from the perspective of an investor. I mean, the oil prices affecting tickets when
The
you
salary raises, right?
yes,
The lack of
unions,
skilled workers because it requires a lot of skilled workers. So there's
yes,
always pressure from that
because they
side.
are like
The margins are very tight, right?
very thin. Yes,
Yeah.
Very, very thin
thin.
margins.
And
Um,
go ahead.
but still, airlines are essential for the functioning of a normal economy.
Yes.
Um, and so I I don't see really. So look, the way I trade airlines, sometimes I go long airlines, sometimes I go long oil stocks
Mhm.
because both are negatively correlated. At least from some back testing I did, I see that when oil stocks go up, they go up because oil prices, so fuel prices go up, and this puts downward pressure on airline stocks.
Mhm.
So typically every year I swing trade between airline stocks and oil stocks. So I buy oil stocks and then I buy airline stocks when the airline stocks are really beaten down. I usually tend to swing trade between the two because there is something I like about airline companies is that the financials are fairly stable over time. The demand usually grows over time. I'm not talking about the COVID years, 2020, where everything was locked down. Obviously, they took a big hit, a lot of those companies. But overall, since 2 decades, there are more and more people flying. So revenue goes higher and higher. So the margins, they stay the same. They're currently under pressure because of the very high oil prices. But it could also be interesting to invest now, I think, in airline stocks because oil prices are very high. And it is not impossible that next year, for example, in case of recession, that energy prices would go down. There would be lower demand for energy, and typically the demand for flying is quite sticky, especially in the US. Because in the US, if you want to go from east to west coast, like millions of Americans need to do on a weekly basis, so the relationship there is a bit different to what Europeans have with their planes. Europeans, they use the plane usually to go on their yearly big holiday to, I don't know, Canary Islands, or to fly, usually for holidays. But you have a lot of Americans that use the plane once or twice a week to really cross the country. So the demand tends to be rather sticky actually in the US because of the lack of alternative. I mean, the alternative is what? Is Amtrak, the train that drives at 50, 50 kilometers per hour? The bus that is incredibly crowded. And I mean, I don't even want to start talking about the buses there. I took the bus there. I took Amtrak. I'm sorry, the only real option is to fly airlines in the US.
In the US.
So,
Yeah.
uh,
But
Max, help me understand what could be reasons to short stocks. I mean, if you don't have insider knowledge on what's going to happen inside, for example, Lufthansa, what could be the reason to short airline stocks that are usually, I mean, that are essential and where the demand tends to be sticky?
Yeah, well, I mean, you just have to look at the financials in some parts. I mean, it's a great hedge if you have long positions and then you want to find a crappy company. You can look in the airline sector and you're probably going to find one that loses money after it's been there for 30 years, has high debt, and needs new capital. So,
Is that the
yeah, it
case of
was kind of bad
Lufthansa?
shot. Sorry?
Is that the case of Lufthansa
It was the
specifically?
case when I shorted it. It was 2021. So after the pandemic,
Okay.
they were in financial trouble and they had to get help from the German government. And
Yes.
after that, they even had to give out more stocks to get more
Yes, they,
finance.
they, they they received help actually. They were kind of bailed out, right, from the German
Yeah.
government. But this also provides some level of comfort as a shareholder that in times of trouble like COVID, which is very exceptional, you know that you have the government behind that's going to save your butt, and you basically can never go bankrupt. Should I mean in term long term, so short term, I understand the idea of shorting, but long term, does it not make sense to have Lufthansa in the portfolio? Is it not something rather safe asset to have in the portfolio?
Well, I would think about it in alternatives because, of course, you could have Lufthansa and you could treat that as a safe investment. But I could also buy JP Morgan, probably have a higher return, and just have the US government bail me out in case of an emergency.
yeah.
So I think just it's a crappy alternative in comparison to other stocks that perform yeah, probably better.
Yeah, I understand because I personally I sold my Lufthansa stock before this episode, so it's not related to what Mike said. Yesterday, I closed all my Lufthansa positions. There was an interesting rise in the Lufthansa stock recently. There was some downward pressure on oil, but then I saw now oil going up again, like a little spike. We went again above $80 a barrel. So as I said, as short term is it can be interesting to play airlines, but long term maybe it will drag your performance down, right? Because it's definitely not growth stocks for most of them, right? I'm sure there are some interesting growth plays in the airline sector.
In the airlines. So I have a list of the 10 best airlines in the world, okay? Number one is Qatar. Then it goes Korea, Cathay Pacific, Air New Zealand, Emirates, Air France, KLM, All Nippon Airways, which is Japanese, Etihad, Qantas, Virgin Australia, the top 10. None of them are American. So for my portfolio style, which I prefer to be exclusive in the United States, with the exception of LVMH, nothing fits for my portfolio. And that's the first layer of the onion. There's only one company. Max, which one's your favorite airline that you could say is the best that you consider investing long in it?
Ryanair, simply
Ryanair?
because it has some innovation. I mean, I recently watched the CEO in an interview, and he spoke about that they want to charge for going to the toilet. Then they want to have only one toilet instead of 3 ones, and then they want to have standing places on short-range flights. And I think, I mean, at least it's innovative, and it's cheap. So
trying.
Yeah.
They're trying to innovate somehow because
I'm sorry, guys. Am I on another planet here?
Why?
Is it innovative to charge for toilet?
No, they charge
How
for
is that
toilets so they
innovative,
can
Max?
so less people go to the toilet, so they can add the standing seats instead of the 2 other toilets.
Yes, I understand having one toilet instead of 3 to save space, but how about charging for toilet? Is that innovative?
No, but
I mean, so the plane is a plane. So whatever the plane is, they're not going to add any more room. I mean, Boeing and Airbus, they've been making the same planes for forever. So the laws of physics are there. They're not going to go any faster. They're not going to get any bigger. So you're going to have to make the best you can. And I know it sounds ridiculous that we call it innovation, and I agree with you. It's not really innovation. It's just a way to squeeze more money from the consumers, having them going to the bathroom 3 times and charging them 3 times, which sounds good on paper, but when you get up there to travel and then you eat something on the plane and then you have to go to the bathroom 4 times, okay? I mean, you're not going to like it, but...
Well, I think here's where we are flagging, we are highlighting actually the something really important. We're putting the finger on something really important is that when Apple innovates, we have an amazing product that customers are very happy to use. But when airlines innovate, it's usually to worsen the user experience, where you try to fit more people inside the planes. You try to make bigger planes where you fit more people. You remove toilets. You charge for toilet. And unfortunately, this is the level of innovation that we have in airlines that Max is putting the finger on. And I think this is why long term, it's not really interesting to go in airlines, because there is just a lack of inspiration and innovation. But what could be the reason for a lack of innovation? Is it just engineering issues, like the engineers that are in the airline sector, they just don't have let's say, any kind of humanity in them? Or what is the reason the airlines are really not not in there's no innovation in airlines? What could be the reason? Is there no incentive to be innovative?
Well, I mean, is there really any space for innovation left? Is really the question. Because what should they optimize? I mean, ticket prices are what they are. They already have low margins, so they can't really raise them up. In terms of safety, which is now a lot in the press with Boeing, of course, they can do more controls, but that, of course, is more costs. And when you optimize for the pilots, the safety systems, I actually read that the other day in a book by Nassim Taleb. He pointed out that if you increase the safety mechanisms that the pilots have, actually the flight gets unsafer because the pilots rely more on them and personally act more reckless. So even you can't even optimize that because it actually makes it unsafer. So I don't really know what you could add actually.
So I'm not invested in airlines, but I really looked into them when I was doing my selection, where to invest and where not to invest. And so the airlines, there was a boom after World War II when the jet engines got into the aviation sector until the late 70s when the Concorde introduced. Do you remember the Concorde? You guys remember the Concorde? It was the plane that was flying London to New York in half the time than the regular jet engines. Do you remember those? So
Yeah.
those, they are discontinued because they had a couple of accidents. So the best innovation that happens in the aviation was the Concorde, but it was expensive. So innovation doesn't depend to the airlines because Boeing and Airbus, the duopoly of making planes, they don't make any innovation. And I believe they are both companies are market based. If the market wants better planes, faster planes, they're going to give them to them. But I don't think the airlines need anything more than what they already have. And from there, the innovation becomes a better service on the plane. So I don't know if you ever traveled with Emirates or Qatar Airlines. The service up there is quite spectacular compared to the Europeans. But there is nothing, and like you said, Akim, when Apple comes with innovation, you are like, wow, okay, this is the next level. With airlines, I mean, what are they gonna do?
Yes, absolutely. And I think you actually mentioned something that we absolutely should discuss. It's this duopoly. Perhaps this is the root of the whole airline disease and lack of innovation. It's that airlines, all the airlines, when they make contracts to buy planes from a manufacturer, it's always very long-term contracts. And we have only two manufacturers in the world, in the entire world. It's Boeing, US Boeing, and European Airbus. And perhaps the reason is that the airlines that tend to buy planes from Boeing and the ones that tend to buy from Airbus, they tend to do it for the very long term. And the order book is full for both companies, Boeing and Airbus. Even with safety issues that we have currently in the press in Boeing, the demand will not go down for Boeing's products, actually, for Boeing's planes. Because Airbus will tell, sure, I can make you planes, but I will be able to do it only in 2030. And Boeing will say, I can do it in 2027. And it's going to be roughly the same prices, roughly the same making inside. So perhaps the lack of innovation is related to that, is that we're in a duopolistic situation where probably the winners are actually the two companies that are in the duopoly, Boeing and Airbus. Um, and the losers are actually the airlines, all the airline companies that are paying high prices for the planes to be in the priority list of the order book. And of course, all the passengers that are paying the airlines to be able to fly on those planes manufactured by Boeing and Airbus. And Boeing and Airbus will always be supported by their governments, Boeing by the US and Airbus by the EU. They will never be let down. So in my case, with this logic, I have one uh, overweight airline stock in my portfolio. It's Airbus. Um, I made it overweight given the recent news from Boeing. I always had interest for Boeing or Airbus. I chose to go with Airbus. I found the valuation more interesting, and also because Boeing has regularly issues, safety issues, media issues. So I am thinking that perhaps over some years, over the years, that the customers of Boeing might start thinking to shift to Airbus. I'm not talking about US airlines, they will always stay with Boeing, but the airlines that are outside the US, in particular the Asian airlines. Um, we don't know well Indian airlines or Chinese airlines, but I'm sure that this will come and they will continue growing very quickly. And I am thinking that they might preferred to go with Airbus rather than with Boeing, given the news. So Boeing has a little bit more potential for growth. So in my opinion, the only two growth stocks in the whole airline sector is Boeing and Airbus. It's the only two that have potential to grow. They don't have fantastic financials neither, because it's still a very expensive business, very capital intensive. But I see the potential there eventually.
Yeah. What do you think, Max?
Yeah, I mean, those stocks are basically the only ones that can really profit and that can really expand. So I think it's a viable thesis, of course. I mean, Boeing is probably a bit safer because 42% of their revenue comes from defense and security, which is pretty flat most of the time. But Airbus has more than 80% of its revenue from commercial aircraft. So they are more able to profit, of course, from all of this. So I think Airbus has more likely better growth chances, especially since Boeing, the finance chief of Boeing actually recently said that they expect Boeing to be cash flow negative for the whole year.
Yeah.
So even though they're in this good position, they still don't make money.
And this is crazy, in my opinion, because they're part of a global duopoly, but in the US, it's a monopoly, really. And they're still not managing to make money, even being in a monopolistic position in the US. I mean, this for me is insane, actually. And I guess that's the reason why, Dimitri, you don't have it in your portfolio.
No,
Or are there other reasons? Because you love those huge US companies. So Boeing would fit pretty well in your overall portfolio strategy.
it would if whatever you just mentioned wasn't the case. I mean, you're right. If you're an American airline company, if you're an airline in the United States of America, you're not buying Boeing. Maybe you have every now and then you buy a Boeing here and there just to satisfy the allies in Europe, and the European allies, they do the same with Boeing. Let's just buy from each other, but if you're supplying the US government with equipment every year, and if you have the monopoly in selling to the airlines in the US and the US allies mostly, and you can't get it together to be profitable, okay? And then one CEO comes, he leaves, another one comes, and you can't get it together, and you see the chart of the price it goes, it's like a straight line. What is it there to like? I mean, if you are an individual investor and you just want to take a bet, fine. But we're not just managing our money, we're managing the money of others. So you have to make a decision. Is that worth the risk? And to me, it doesn't. I would much prefer to invest in Lockheed Martin and just clearly the defense contractors instead of Boeing or Airbus. I'm not very familiar with Airbus, but at this time, it's a better choice than Boeing.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, on my private portfolio, I've also got Lockheed Martin because I think it's just a better pick. I recently listened to a podcast about Lockheed Martin. Actually, it was a 4-hour episode over the whole history and the whole defense sector. And when I listened to it, I realized it's really hard to lose money when you are in the defense sector, when you're one of the big 5 companies, because they basically rotate everything, all the spendings through those 5 companies. And you don't even build a prototype up front. You just select it and then you build a prototype and then you sell them everything you want and you give a price you want, basically. So it's really hard not to make money when you determine the price, you determine what's built, basically, and you are completely free in that. So I don't know how Boeing manages to lose so much money in the position they are.
I think this is the first time that we all completely agree on same point, huh? Dimitri and me, we tend to disagree a lot, but I think we both agree here on airlines, and we have Max also in agreement. So I think there's really not much to add, but the airline sector, that it's not an attractive sector. It's a difficult business to be in. It could make sense to be exposed to the manufacturers of those airplanes. As Max said, Boeing has a significant portion of their revenue from defense, from the US government, and both are supported by their respective governments. So probably it makes sense to be exposed to the manufacturers directly if you wish to be exposed to the airline sector.
Yeah, I mean, also if you think about it, when would you invest in an airline? I mean, there's those two types of value investing, basically, or at least that's my opinion. You have the old value investing after Graham, basically, that you find a company that's trades significantly under what's worth, and I think such situations can occur in airlines. But then you have the newer value approach that Buffett uses because of the influence of Charlie Munger when he started to buy good businesses to fine prices. And I think under these conditions, you won't find anything. I mean, Buffett himself is really anti-airline because when you told me what we are going to talk about today, I instantly thought of Buffett, and I actually found a quote of him. And he said, the airline business is a death trap. It's a business that's got huge upfront costs, and then you compete fiercely on price, which pushes profit margins down to a level that can't support those capital investment, especially through economic downturns when demand for air travel dips. And I think that sums it up really good. You don't have good margins, and it's just, most of the time, it's a waste of money.
Yeah, I think there's another quote that says, if you want to be a millionaire, just being a billionaire, buy an airline. Is that what the quote is? Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of those.
Yeah,
I think he also said something about the best day in the life of an airline is when it's founded, or something like that. So
yeah,
no.
so you don't want to be touching those airlines if they're making fun of them, like all the serious people, they're making fun of them. But for me, the moment, I mean, you have to see the macro view, the way I see it. And from there, I'm going to make a decision if I'm jumping into the sector. And there is a famous investor that I like really much. Yeah, his name is Carl Icahn. You guys know him?
Yeah, I thought you were going to mention me, yeah?
Carl Icahn, and he got screwed with TWA, an airline back in the 70s or 80s. And his quote was, don't get involved with airlines because in good times, unions are killing you. In bad times, at the oil prices. So there you have it. Too many people saying don't touch the airlines.
Yes. All right, guys. Thank you for that. I think we gave interesting insights on the airlines. So make sure to follow, subscribe, rate us, send us your comments, your questions. If you have questions to Max, you can always put them in the comments, and we will forward them to Max. So thank you guys for listening.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.